In this lecture, we'll take a look at how we can configure vjuEresource globally. The first thing I want to show you is defining a root URL for requests. You probably noticed that we have been specifying fully qualified URLs so far, which is not really ideal. We had to do that because we're communicating with a server that's running on a different port. Fortunately, we can configure vjuEresource to use a root URL for requests, so that we don't need to specify this part of the URL over and over. We'll do that globally, meaning within the main.js file. So let me just open that up. And right here at the top, I will write view.http, and notice that on the global view class, I shouldn't prefix HTTP with a $, unlike within components. Then we have an options object, and on this options object I can set a root property to a string. So this is the root URL that will be used for requests. So I can set this to http:// localhost @ port 3000. Note that the value does not necessarily have to be fully qualified, but can be a relative path as well. Let's now open up the product list component and remove the first part of the URL now that we have specified a root. So this right here, I can just remove, so we have a relative path here instead. Going to the browser, I will open up the console to inspect the request and refresh the page. Notice that the request URL is wrong, since it's using the URL of the current page as the base URL instead of the root that we specified. So this clearly didn't work. Let's go back to the code. The reason this happens is because we added a leading slash to the path. When doing this, the root URL will be ignored, because this is a way for us to ignore it. The solution is simple: simply remove the slash to make the path relative to the root URL. So delete it like so, and back to the browser. Let's try to refresh, and now everything works. So now the products are being rendered and everything looks good. So let's do the same for the other HTTP requests within the VueProduct component. So let's open that component up. Let's start from the top within the created lifecycle hook and just remove this part. And going down, we have another URL here. I can do the same. And let's just scroll all the way down and remove this part as well as for this one. Let's just test that everything still works, just for good measure. So that part seems okay. And that works as well. So as you can see, the root URL is also used for resources. But what if we don't want the root URL to be applied? Well, I already showed you that you can add a leading slash when communicating on the same IP or address. In case you need to communicate with other hosts, then you can simply use a fully qualified URL and the root URL will be ignored. But specifying a root URL is not the only thing we can configure. We can specify default headers as well. Perhaps we want to specify a CSRF token, or alternatively, what is sending the request. For the following example, I will add an xRequestedWith header and set it to XML HTTP request. Let's do that within the main.js file. So again, view.http, then we have a headers object and a common property on this object. So I can add a new key to this object, and I will use the square bracket syntax because the key is going to contain dashes. So this will be the name of my header. So xRequestedWith equals XML HTTP request. The common object is just an object of common headers that will be applied to all of the HTTP verbs that are used for requests. So this header will now be applied to all requests of any HTTP verb. If we only wanted to include the header for post request, for example, we could write post instead of common. There are objects matching each HTTP verb in cases you want to be more specific. So like I said, I could write post here, or get, or any other HTTP verb. But let's just leave it at common for now. So let's open up the browser and also the console, just to verify that the header is indeed being added to the requests. So let's try to refresh the page and inspect the headers. And down there at the bottom, you can see the header that we just added. Those were some common configuration options applied globally, and therefore to all HTTP requests. Next up, I will show you how we can accomplish the same thing, but at the component level instead.